do you think is better? Why? In what ways, if any, have constitutional amendments helped the United States become a more perfect union? Explain. You may begin.
With every generation comes great challenges. Throughout the history of the United States, the Constitution has been amended 27 times to meet the current needs of the nation, many of which did not exist in 1787. The structures of and reasons for constitutional amendments may vary, but the fundamental goal remains the same, helping the United States become a more perfect union.
Although the founders were able to evaluate elements of the governments of other countries and incorporate the best ones, there was still room for change in the Constitution. The Bill of Rights acted as a unifying force between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, garnering more support for the newly established union and creating a two-party political system that has been integral in the development of the United States.
Every amendment to the Constitution has either been a procedural change or has granted rights to the people. Amendments that have involved issues other than those two have not been ratified, with the exception of the 18th, which was repealed. The 17th Amendment represents an example of a procedural change, establishing the direct election of senators and furthering the principle of democracy within American government. The 19th Amendment extended the rights of American citizens, declaring that the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. By allowing the other half of the population to participate in government, the idea expressed in the preamble that we the people of the United States legally included everyone, allowing the country to strive to becoming a more perfect union.
In 1789, Thomas Jefferson wrote to James Madison that every constitution then and every law naturally expires at the end of 19 years. If it be enforced longer, it is an act of force and not of right. In order to ensure that the Constitution remained applicable to the citizens that it governed and able to be enforced fairly, Jefferson argued that the document must be written every generation.
Although it would prevent the Constitution from becoming outdated, this process would be nearly impossible to execute today. The modern party system is largely to blame, since it prevents any quick, decisive action from taking place within the national government. The amount of time and compromise necessary to create a new constitution is lacking in today's government, which is disagreed to such an extent that it can't even pass a new budget, prompting a government shutdown.
Instead, the formal constitutional amendment process and the informal processes of judicial review and interpretation, congressional legislation, and executive orders must be utilized to allow government to evolve and progress over time. The formal amendment process can exist in two forms, a short or a long process. A short process for a constitutional amendment is not in existence in the United States because the lengthy amendment process is necessary in order to ensure that an amendment is truly needed. However, policy can be changed relatively quickly by any branch of government without actually amending the Constitution. If amendments to the Constitution could be added or repealed as easily as statutes, they would be more easily subject to the quickly changing views of the public.
Despite the individual's Second Amendment right to bear arms being reaffirmed in the 2010 Supreme Court case McDonald v. Chicago, there have been attempts to restrict or even deny the right to gun ownership after the shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary in Connecticut and the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. Instead of passing an amendment or repealing the Second Amendment altogether after these tragedies, the debate over firearms have been subject to the same thorough process as any other possible constitutional amendment.
If a proposed change cannot survive the long process, there is no reason to believe that it will be supported or effective once passed. For this reason, the most effective and best way to achieve constitutional change is through a comprehensive or scrupulous, in-depth amendment process.
Thank you.
356.
Are there any amendments that we should add to the Constitution?
The Equal Rights Amendment that was proposed to create equality between the sexes has been debated for decades. I do think that it should be added just because it adds another layer of protection for women, but it would also bring up a lot of legal issues, such as it would establish rights that could not be abridged, but then that would also leave open certain rights that might be able to be abridged.
So do you think that men should be able to have 6 weeks off when their wives give birth?
They should not be given as much time off, but they are given some paternal.
Why not? If it's equal rights, I should get as much time off as my wife, shouldn't I?
The woman is the one that gives up her body. right?
So what? It's equal rights.
As Maddie said, there are legal implications when providing an amendment such as that one and putting it into the Constitution. Obviously, the woman goes through a little bit more of a strenuous process when giving birth rather than just videotaping. I don't know. But the male should have time off and have time with his family and his wife and be able to be with his child. But I do think that there are definitely some legalities that would have to go into adding that certain amendment into the Constitution.
Anybody else, any other amendments we should add to the Constitution?
Add or subtract?
So an amendment, she subtracted.
The 18th and 21st Amendments could be completely eliminated.
The
because-
21st limited to 18, so it's
Well,
not
yes, but
necessary.
it's no longer necessary to even have them in the Constitution, in the text of the Constitution, because it's basically just filling up space that's not necessary.
So is the Third Amendment taking up space?
No, it hasn't been repealed, it's still in place.
So then, is it taking up space? It's never gone in front of the Supreme Court ever.
Wait, what do you mean?
Third Amendment's never gone in front of the Supreme Court, is it taking up space?
No,
So what's the difference between 18 and 21?
because the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment.
So what are you gonna do with them now?
Just get rid of them.
Can't. It already did. Then what happens if you get the 21st and 18th back in place?
Wait, what happens if you do what?
If you get rid of the 21st and then the 18th back in place,
No, that's why you get rid of both of them.
how do you do that? An amendment to repeal them both?
If we just rewrote the Constitution and just leave them out entirely.
Oh, so now we're rewriting the Constitution?
Yes.
You know?
Go ahead, sorry. I just wanted to see how, keep digging on that
We're
one.
done digging. We're done.
Can you explain to me your statements in your testimony? Your second paragraph, you say amendments that have involved issues other than those two have not been ratified with the exception of the 18th, which was repealed. What are you telling me there? What are those two? What are the other issues? And what? I'm lost.
Oh, it's here.
Well, the two issues that we were referring to were the procedural change or granting further rights to the people.
Other than those two issues, other than a procedural change or granting rights to the people, with the exception of the 18th Amendment, which was repealed.
So the 18th
That makes
Amendment was not a procedural change, nor was it granting further rights to the people. So it cannot fall under,
So we're saying okay, so amendments that have not involved a procedural change or granted rights further to the people have not been ratified.
Good, give me an example.
the,
That's what's missing. I mean, that's his point.
That's the confusion.
There-
You're not telling me anything. You're just saying something happened here, but you're not telling me what it was that happened.
With the exception of the 18th, so what was the
Right.
18th?
it was prohibition.
Okay, well, is it procedural or is it granting rights?
It wasn't.
And you need to explain that. With the
Okay.
exception of the 18th, which was repealed, so what did the 18th do?
Okay.
Okay? Okay, you don't tell me what the other, he's saying the point is, you don't have what the other amendments that haven't been ratified are, that aren't procedural or granting rights to the people, and or what does the 18th do? How's the 18th different than the former?
Okay.
Okay?
And a little further on your second page, you make a statement about the amount of time and compromise necessary to create a new constitution is lacking in today's government, which has disagreed to such an extent that it can't even pass a new budget. I'm not sure what, where are you going with that as far as, are you saying they can't get along and so there's no way they could write another constitution? Or, what is it that is your, I go back to, that's a confusing statement to me.
I think we were trying to refer to more of, they don't get much done.
Well, I'll agree 100% with you.
Right.
I mean, they get
and
nothing
so
done,
we were,
but,
yeah,
you know, I'd rather you say they don't get anything done than, you know, trying to,
straight to
you know,
the
get around it
Yeah,
and be fluffy with words and so you can make it longer. Get to the point and say, you know, they're non-functional at this point.
And how do we know they're non-functional? There are statistics that back up the fact they're non-functional. You're missing facts. How many bills have been passed in 2013? That would be a point that emphasizes that they're can't do anything.
Or even in the past, how many years? I mean, it's staggering.
okay.
I mean, if the number holds true that I know, it's,
Did you say 13 last year?
Get it right on that.
You said you should.
Check.
According to Mr. Clark,
No,
we're
according
19
to, I'm not a
bills.
source.
yeah.
If we're not doing constitutional amendments, then what are we doing? How do we change the Constitution? How does it still alive and thrive today?
They can be interpreted different. The Constitution can be interpreted different ways.
So is it a living document or is it a dead document?
It's most likely a living document.
We still, to this day, argue over the Second Amendment. There are, just the other day, last week, in our own county, we had a school shooting. And just the other day, in our legal class, we were talking about the Second Amendment right, and it is not only that amendment, but many other amendments,
Such as,
such as women's rights,
what are some women's rights in the Constitution? What,
freedom, okay, well,
where's men's rights in the Constitution?
men wrote the Constitution. They were giving themselves rights as they wrote the document. They weren't thinking of women.
Really?
or
Give me an example of that.
others.
Jason, anything to add?
Are we still in cross-section?
Yes.
He was hoping we're out of that by now.
Stop the camera.
It's been 12 minutes.
Oh, good.